You are listening to the You Glow Girl podcast. This is a podcast for the above average girl who is working towards becoming her best self every day. On this podcast, we will talk all things self-development, spirituality, feminism, wellness, business, sex, relationships, and all the things we are constantly improving. I'm your host, Valerie and a type A overachieving vegan half Mexican Aries. I own a content creation agency that supports woman-owned businesses. I travel the world with my adorable English husband and spoil my 2 Chiweenie puppies. I believe we can be our best selves, live our best lives, and have it all. So join me while we listen to amazing guests who are doing the damn thing and as we all grow together. Dorsey Standish is the Chief Mindfulness Officer of Mastermind, a Dallas-based brain health consulting team. Dorsey is a mechanical engineer, neuroscientist, and wellness expert who brings research-backed mindfulness meditation to clients nationwide. Dorsey has shared science-based mindfulness solutions with hundreds of companies, including Staples, Pier 1, United Way, Peloton. Dorsey's teachings draw on her neuroscience background and her personal practice and experience, along with her certification in mindfulness-based stress reduction from UMass and deep experience on regular 7-day silent meditation retreats studying with master teachers. Dorsey joins us today on the You Glow Girl podcast to chat about the science behind meditation and mindfulness and how we can get started and use it to our benefit. Hey, Dorsey, thank you so much for joining me today.
Hey, Valerie, I'm really happy to be here.
I knew since starting a podcast that I wanted to have you on because I just know you're a genius in what you do. And I'm so excited to hear your insight. But can you kind of explain what you do and a little bit of your background in neuroscience?
Sure, Valerie. Yeah. So my passion is helping type A people like me calm down a little bit and perform better while stressing a lot less. Right now, I get to do that as Chief Mindfulness Officer of Mastermind, where we share science-based emotional intelligence and mindfulness strategies with companies and individuals across the U.S. Actually, we've just started to expand our business virtually and nationwide. And my background is actually in mechanical engineering. So I found these practices when I was a corporate stress ball working for Texas Instruments, and was kind of like, people in my life have told me that I'm probably the last person they ever thought would be practicing mindfulness, let alone teaching it. And it was my own experience of stress and burnout at TI that led me to research stress resilience and how to make my brain healthier and more productive. And I landed on mindful meditation and committed to a daily practice just for my own benefit, and got so passionate about it that I could not help but share it with the people I was working with at TI. And in 2016, I left the corporate world to share science-based mindfulness with the world full time. I'm also, as you mentioned, enrolled in a neuroscience graduate program at the University of Texas at Dallas. So I get to fully unite these two worlds of experiential mindfulness and wellness and this science-based perspective, where I can survey the latest neuroscience research and help people understand a little bit better how their brain works and how mindful meditation can help them optimize their brain.
I love that so much because first off, it gives me a lot of hope because I am that type A person that stresses about everything. So I'd love to, chill out and know that that's a possibility in life. But I love what you do because it is science-based. And I know meditation and mindfulness is very trendy right now. And everyone's, jumping on the bandwagon of self-care and morning routines. But I'm all for it. And I think, if it's a trend that is going to benefit so many people, whether they're doing it the most correct way or not, or with the most research behind it or not, I think it's great to do regardless. But what is some of the best benefits you've seen in your experience with some of the people and the businesses you've worked with?
Yeah, I love that question, Valerie. So I love to share from my own experience first. So I mentioned that I started meditating while I was working at Texas Instruments. And I'd say the top 3 benefits that I saw pretty quickly. The first one was less reactivity. So when I got a crazy text message or email or someone cut me off in traffic, I wasn't so quick to jump down the other person's throat, right? I had these tools to calm down a little bit and come from a place of responding rather than reacting to what was around me. I also noticed heightened ability to concentrate, to do what I call single tasking, right? Like focus on one thing at once. And I found that it made me so much more productive and efficient. I went from working 8-hour days at TI to working 4 to 6 hours a day and getting just as much, if not more, done in that time. And the third benefit that I saw pretty quickly was this sort of intangible cultivation of these inner resources. So I spent a long time in my life looking outside of myself to feel better or to like get out of stressful situations. And I still do that to some extent. I think it's natural for humans to look to like food or people or something to change the way that we feel. But through a mindfulness practice, I started cultivating this inner strength within me so that I didn't necessarily have to look outside of myself to feel better, to stress less, to cope with a difficult situation. I was cultivating these inner resources of strength and resilience and well-being. And I think that you mentioned it's like, if anyone wants to do this, even if they're not doing it the perfect way, like that's good, right? Because I think in our world, you know, the world asks so much of us. And if we can take just a few minutes a day to care for ourselves in whatever way serves us best, maybe that's mindfulness for you. Maybe that's like jumping up and down to a workout video. We all have our own things. But for me, committing to a few moments in silence with myself every day in a meditation practice was that thing that helped me connect to my inner strength and resilience. And so those anecdotal benefits I found out are actually not just my story, right? They're actually backed up by science and research. So some of my clients see the similar benefits that I did, right? This lower level of reactivity to the world around them. They experience lower stress levels in general. So there's really a lot of research around lowering levels of stress hormones in the body. Stress indicators like blood pressure and resting heart rate, right, are also lowered with a regular mindful meditation practice. And people report just generally better levels of well-being, better mood, and better mental health. And we see similar benefits too in terms of concentration and focus. So one of my favorite studies to cite is actually a research paper that looked at just 20 minutes of meditation a day for 2 weeks and found that after those 2 weeks, that participants were better able to resist distractions during their task. They had more moments of uninterrupted focus, and they actually performed better on the tasks, had a better ability to focus and hold more items in their working memory with just 2 weeks of meditating 20 minutes a day, right? And so it's like, you know, research like that, sometimes the idea of doing something like meditation every day seems daunting. But what I like to remind people is that even if you just do it for 2 to 8 weeks, science shows that it starts to reshape your behaviors, to reshape the structure of your brain. And it also shows that even if we fall off our practices for a little bit, that we retain those benefits for a little while after we stop practicing. And so I'm really excited that my own experience and that of my clients is really matched up with a lot of the science research that we're starting to see now in terms of how we can improve our performance and lower our stress levels through mindful meditation.
That's so amazing. And I've seen a lot of those benefits as well, because I deal with very similar, like the stress levels, the reactivity and everything. But it has become so much more widely accepted. Like I'm noticing a lot more companies are working it into their company culture or into their employee benefits and things like that. But even schools as well. A lot of schools are using it with their children, which I think is amazing because it's also normalizing it, because it hasn't been a well-known thing forever. Like it hasn't always been a trend or a solution for a lot of this. A lot of it I feel like a lot of people still connect it with spirituality or with a more like hippie lifestyle. I think there's a lot of connotations behind it, not necessarily bad ones, but just some that some people don't think is something they'd ever be interested in or that they would benefit from. But I do want to backtrack a little and ask like your opinion on why do you think we have all this stress in the first place? Because sometimes I just wonder, I'm like, how did I even get this so far in? And being like this stressed and reacting the same. And I think sometimes it's just like an excuse. We're just like, oh, that's just the way I am. Or I'm just a stressed person. Or I'm just a high strung type A person. And I know for sure for me, I've let that become who I am. And I even tell people like, oh, I'm high strung and type A. And it's kind of like a quirky thing. And now I'm like, oh my gosh, I need to fix this because we're very far in now. But where do you think that even stems from for so many people? Because I know a lot of it is workload and it's very taxing. But like you said, the world asks a lot of us.
Yeah, that's such a good point, Valerie. I think I love what you said. Like it kind of becomes part of your personal narrative. It's almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy. Like, oh, I'm high strung. I'm always stressed out. And then you kind of live up to that. So I think there's also, this idea of kind of busy and stress being a status symbol. Like I'm so important that I have this high level of stress.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Yes. I can't stand it. I mean, I think that especially in the entrepreneurial world, it's grind all day, hustle. Like it's like almost a pride thing. Like I'm doing well because I'm so busy. And I'm glad because I have seen it a lot on social media that people are saying, be productive, not busy, or quit wearing busy as a badge of honor. And like you said, it's become a narrative. So one of my 2020 resolutions was I'm not considering myself a stressed person anymore. Like I've actually told people like, I'm not stressed. And a lot of my friends laugh at me. They're like, come on. Yes, you are. And I'm like, nope. I'm not a stressed person because I don't want to keep fulfilling that because that's not who I want to be. But sorry, carry on with where do you think it like stems from and everything?
Yeah. So, I heard it put this way, like think about our ancestors living in caves, right? And they left the cave and there was a path towards the bear and a path towards the fruit on the tree. Like our brains had to be wired to remember, most importantly, where that bear was, right? Like where the potential danger or threat was. And we didn't pay a lot of attention to the pathways that might be leading to our friends or to fruit, right? Like our brain is hardwired to alert us to challenges and dangers and potential threats so that we stay alive and we pass along our genes. Our brains have not evolved to keep us happy and like content, right? Because if our ancestors just sat around in a cave all day or like sunning themselves on rocks, we wouldn't be where we are today, right? And we wouldn't have experienced all this progress and growth and the passing along of our genes. So I take a lot of comfort in the teachings of evolutionary psychology that actually our brains have been wired to keep us safe. And because of that, we experience activations like stress and anxiety. And the one thing that I love about mindful meditation is, mindfulness simply put just means awareness. So we're able to start bringing awareness, almost like shining a light onto our patterns and our habits. And even what you just mentioned, like I can tell you're very aware of like, oh, I say that I'm stressed. And so I'm shifting that narrative and I'm saying that I'm not stressed, right? And so sometimes the gift of mindfulness is just like shining a light in the darkness, illuminating our patterns, illuminating the fact that yes, as human beings, we're wired to pay attention to what's wrong and what's potentially dangerous. And we can also rewire our brains to focus on what's going right and to focus on the present moment. So I think that we're in a situation right now with the advent of more technology, of social media, of, you mentioned kind of this like competitive suffering or competitive busyness, like how important am I? We're in this time where our brains could just go totally haywire with our stress response being at max all the time. And that's why I think now more than ever that mindfulness is becoming so important for sanity and peace and well-being. When you look at the research around mindfulness and gratitude practice as well, you can start to combat those tendencies of the brain to race forward into the future, to dwell back in the past on what went wrong yesterday, right? And teach us to help, be present where our feet are. There's a quote that I probably shared with you before, which is, an anxious mind lives in the future, a depressed mind lives in the past, and a peaceful mind lives here in the present moment.
Oh, wow. I love that. Because I have an anxious mind, all right.
I think it's part of the human condition. And I think that's what I love about the conversations around mental health and that you brought this up, because so many people in my mindfulness classes will say, I thought I was the only one that felt like that, or the only one that had that happen. And it's from questions and comments from other students that they realize that this isn't me that's crazy. That's the monkey mind. Like, that's the human condition of, like you said, the anxious mind in the future, the depressed mind dwelling in the past. And I think it's our responsibility as humans in the present world to awaken to this present moment, to practice being where our feet are, and to practice a sense of gratitude and appreciation for where we're at. Not to be to get sucked into the tendencies of our brain to be discontent and stressed out all the time.
Yeah. And I love the way you explain mindfulness, because I think so many people still think that it's the act or the practice of not thinking or of like stopping your brain. And I think that stops so many people from trying meditation or different like gratitude practices, because so many people are like, well, I can't get my brain to stop, or I can't focus for 20 minutes a day in silence. And I remember doing one of your workshops, and the way and you described it was mindfulness is like being above the clouds and seeing everything below and recognizing it, but not having to act on it. I don't think that's word for word how you explained it, but can you elaborate on what exactly mindfulness is rather than, stopping your brain?
Right. Yeah. And Valerie, that's such an important point, because I think for type A people like us, we're like, oh, if I can't do it right, I don't want to do it.
Oh,
right?
Absolutely. It's like, there's no point.
And it can be really frustrating for beginners, because they have this idea, right, that mindfulness means stopping all thought. And really what it means, as I mentioned, is just awareness, is paying attention to what's happening with an attitude of openness and curiosity. And I love that you brought up that metaphor of the blue sky. So we can think about like our awareness being like the blue sky. And a lot of times there are clouds and storms and wind and things that take up our mental space, right? But as you mentioned, no matter how busy our mind is, we can get up into our airplane and fly up through that cloud cover into that space of blue sky that's always up there if you go high enough. And as you mentioned, looking down from that seat of awareness, the mindfulness practice, and noticing, oh, there's that thought of my to-do list coming again and again, or there's that anxiety. Oh my gosh, I can feel it in my chest. This is present for me. And we don't have to make anything go away. We don't have to try to change what's happening or to make ourselves have some kind of meditative experience. It's really the practice of noticing things come and watching them go, just like clouds in the sky, just like the weather is never the same, right? For more than a few minutes at a time. And that awareness and that the fact that we get to watch this impermanence helps remind us that we don't have to identify with our thoughts or our emotions. They're not who we are. We are not our anger or our obsessive thinking. We are actually that place of awareness, that sky that's big enough to hold whatever's happening to us.
And I think one thing you also mentioned, there's so many things from your workshops that have I related so much, and I've taken them throughout the years. And whenever I talk to people about meditation, I always bring these up with them. But one thing I've taken away that has really helped me, especially with identifying and not creating it as a narrative, is rather than choosing to say, I am stressed, because that's like surrounding myself and consuming myself with it, it's I feel stressed, and it's okay to have feelings. And that's one thing, a big part of mindfulness, isn't it? That you're recognizing the feelings. It's not saying that you're never going to feel stressed again or angry or sad again. It's recognizing your thoughts. And I think just having more patience with yourself to cope with those. And that's one thing that I've really had to work on, and why I try to practice meditation so much is I get stressed. I feel stressed often. I have to catch myself still. But it's letting myself recognize when I'm stressed and kind of what's the trigger, rather than just being like, I'm stressed and that's it. Because I think there's so many times where, especially for type A individuals who get overwhelmed, we'll just say like, I'm overwhelmed, I'm feeling overwhelmed. And somebody could ask you why, and it's just, I'm just overwhelmed. It's never because I have this on my plate and I need to work on this. It's always you're allowing, a month worth of ideas or a week worth of workload to build up in that moment. And you're just saying like, I'm overwhelmed, rather than recognizing, okay, what is actually going on and why am I feeling this way? So I think that's like a huge part of it as well, right? That feelings are still okay to have. Like, we're going to have those feelings. Like, it's not stopping those from happening, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Feelings, thoughts, like it's all part of this crazy thing called human existence. And I love that you brought awareness to the power of language and the tendency of our English language to, even identify us with our experience. So I am stressed. I am anxious. I am angry, right? As opposed to something like you mentioned, like I feel anxiety or anger is present for me right now. When we word it like that, we can almost see it as a little cloud in our sky, right? Rather than like the whole sky and defining who we are. And I think I love that you brought that up, that kind of recognizing what's present, realizing that doesn't define you, and then even diving a little bit deeper, investigating, well, do I feel that in my body? Like, because a lot of times when we experience difficult emotion, we get so caught up in our heads that we lose contact with the present moment experience of that emotion. And so a practice that I love to do is called the RAIN technique. We can hopefully link to this in the show notes. It's a practice from Tara Brach, and she invites us to recognize a difficult emotion, to allow it to be present, so not try to change it, and then to investigate the experience of that emotion in the physical body. So you mentioned this feeling of overwhelm, right? Like super vague. Can we feel like, oh, like, is that in my chest? Are there thoughts that are coming up repetitively when I think about being overwhelmed? And then the final step of RAIN is to nurture with self-compassion. So that's a great resource for, type A people like us, or just anyone who's feeling overwhelmed with emotion and wants that permission. I think that's something I give my clients is permission to feel, permission to be, and permission to let things come and go, just like any aspect of life.
I love that so much. I'm going to have to check that out and definitely use it. But I think there's just so many benefits that come and like really anybody, like you don't have to be type A, but I think a lot of it builds self-awareness because you start to really take a step back and observe what you're feeling, why you're feeling it. And I think that just all around helps us just slow down a little bit. And I think that's one thing everybody in the world, especially America, can benefit from, is just slowing down a little bit and seeing what's actually going on. Because I think with overwhelm, especially, so many of us, like I said, like they don't see what's the actual root. It's just like, I am overwhelmed. That's the end of it. Like my body, my day, my week, everything just overwhelmed. That's it. It's not, I'm overwhelmed because I put too much on my plate. What can I remove from my plate? What can I hand off? Like nothing like that. It's always just like strictly overwhelm, chaos and panic. But I think that's super, super beneficial. I wanted to ask you about like what would be a really good place for someone to start. So obviously there's all of these apps available now for guided meditations, but then there's also so many different forms of meditation. Is it TI? Is that, or TM?
Yeah, transcendental meditation, TM.
Yes. So there's all these different variations, and I think it can be overwhelming for a beginner to know where to start or to feel like they're doing it right or getting the benefits from it. So what's your recommendation as far as getting into this whole practice and really getting the most out of it?
Yeah. So I totally resonate with what you're saying, Valerie. I think the world of meditation can feel very overwhelming, talking about overwhelm, right?
Ironically.
I'm trying to do this thing for myself and I'm so confused. I love to remind people that despite all the connotations of meditation, meditate just means focusing on something. So you can really meditate on anything from your morning cup of coffee to the feeling of the ground underneath your feet, right? To a phrase or a mantra like transcendental meditation has you do. And so we can think of meditation almost like an umbrella term, kind of like sports. There are lots of different kinds of sports. They help you get good at different things. Meditation is the same way. There's transcendental meditation, there's walking meditation, there's mindfulness meditation, which is what I'm trained in. And they all help strengthen your brain and your heart in different ways. And I would say, for me, why mindfulness meditation spoke to me so much is that it teaches us to tune into resources that are inherently available to us in any moment. Right? So in mindful meditation, we use what are called anchors, like our breath, our physical body that we just talked about, or our five senses. And so at any moment, we can tap into those aspects of our experience and feel a sense of grounding and anchoring in this present moment, as opposed to the brain's natural place, like racing into the future or dwelling in the past. And for me, when I was drawn to mindfulness meditation and looked into the research around stress resilience and improved concentration, it was really easy as an overachiever for me to say, okay, I want to do an hour of meditation a day, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think one of the best things I ever did for myself in starting a meditation practice was I gave myself permission to not be very good at it. I gave myself permission to start really small. I started with 1 and 2 minute meditations a day. I promised myself that I would do something every day, no matter how long or short it was. And I now know from studying the neuroscience of habit formation that the most important thing is creating and cementing a new habit. And once you're committed to doing something, even just for a minute a day, it's relatively easy to extend that to like 2 minutes or 5 minutes, right? But the most important thing is that we create a habit of training our brains on a daily basis. It's just like you're probably commit to some kind of physical activity on a regular basis. Same thing with your brain, like taking your brain to the gym and committing to mental fitness. So I always recommend that clients start with just a few minutes of practice every day. You mentioned different apps to try. You're right there. The whole app scene can be overwhelming as well. I love a few apps that really have spoken to me in my practice. The first is the Calm app. So you guys have probably, this is like the number one meditation app, I think.
I
So
love
you guys
that
have probably heard of it. Yeah, they have great music, ambient music for focus. They have sleep stories. They have kids meditation. And it's all in like this really beautiful package that is really easy to use. And kind of encourages you with the inspirational quote at the end of every practice. It's like, okay, it gives you like little rewards. I can tell that they understand the neuroscience of habit formation too, right? The way that they set that up. And the other app that I love is called Simple Habit. Their tagline is 5-minute meditations for busy people. And they have hundreds of teachers all around the world. I have about 15 recordings on the Simple Habit app.
Oh my gosh, that's exciting.
Yeah, you have to check that out. And I love Simple Habit because of the variety of teachers and they're really practical. Like I did a whole mindful eating series, right? There's walking, there's even some coaching now around like working with difficult emotions. And it's really geared towards millennials and people who work really hard and need to prioritize winding down, relaxing, and taking care of their brains. So those are some good places to start. I think when you get into kind of searching around on YouTube or like some people really enjoy that. For me, if I have to spend too much time choosing a practice, I won't actually do it. Yep. And so I spend a small amount of money on a regular basis so that I have the freedom to trust that when I click on a meditation, it's going to be high quality and it's going to be a good experience for me.
And I think that helps with building the habit as well, as you're making it easy for yourself. I love that you mentioned habits because I'm reading Atomic Habit right now and I am so into it. But I remember you mentioning that that's one way that you also made meditation part of your routine was having a routine and creating a ritual around it. I think you mentioned that you paired it with your coffee in the morning because I don't know the technical terms whatsoever, but in Atomic Habit, he mentions like sandwiching your habits where you can package them with habits that you already have to make it a little bit easier to maintain and to hold yourself accountable. And that's how you can either break bad habits or build good habits. But I'd love to know your morning routine and what you do to really get your day started in that calm way. Because I know a lot of people's first step that they do in the morning is grabbing their phone, either to turn off their alarm and then subconsciously they start scrolling, or just, check the time and then check emails and see what's happening. And a lot of that does trigger some immediate overwhelm and stress first thing in the morning, even if I think a lot of times we don't realize it. But I know a lot of my mindfulness practice is about, giving yourself that room to, take care of yourself first before diving into the chaos of the day.
Yeah, that's so true, Valerie. And I'm so grateful for my morning routine. And that's definitely evolved. I think the mindfulness practice, as we talked about, brought more awareness for me about my patterns. And I became more aware of the stress and reactivity that came if I started my day with my phone, for example. So today I have a couple different alarms in my room. One of them is a sun lamp.
Oh, yes.
So it starts to light up for half an hour, like the sunrise. Yeah. And so that's like old school, like real, a real clock. And and it's a Philips sun lamp, and it starts to get bright. And then I also have an Alexa speaker in my room so that I can ask, what's the weather? I can play an audiobook or a meditation on my phone at night, but I don't have to have my phone in the bedroom. So I have a no phone in the bedroom rule. I keep it in my kitchen. And my morning routine, I start by stretching a little bit in bed. I have these really warm, fuzzy socks that my mom got me for Christmas. And so I wake up and I have really warm feet. And so I try to find gratitude for that and a few other things, and get my day started by being grateful for what I have and being excited to come from a place of service for the rest of the day.
And is that just a mental, like you're thinking about your gratitudes, or are you writing them? Or I do think it's funny, ironically, like I think a lot of gratitude practices and a lot of morning routines now are causing overwhelm because people want to hit all these like 15 steps first thing in the morning. And then it's like, it's doing exactly what it's not supposed to do. It's like, well, I need to do my gratitude journal. I need to write in my other journal. I need to meditate, stretch, exercise, do all these things. And it's like, well, how am I supposed to do that in 30 minutes before work? And so it's causing like all this extra stress, and then people bail on it all together.
Yeah.
But sorry, carry on. You do.
Yeah. The effort, like I can't do everything perfectly. So I'm just not going to do anything at all.
And that's probably just like not a me thing, but a perfectionist thing.
Yeah, I think you're not alone. I totally vibe with that. So for me, the first thing in the morning is just like a mental kind of gratitude. It helps me get out of bed. I love to sleep, but I need that kind of jump start in the morning of being grateful and focusing on the ways I'm going to help people that day. Mm-hmm. I get out of bed, I make myself lime water, like warm water with lime or lemon squeezed into it. And I make myself a cup of tea. So I've given up coffee since I first told you about the habit bundling.
Oh
I know, but I do bundle my meditation with chai tea with oat milk in the morning.
Okay.
So I have a couple different, what I do is I make my tea and I sit down for practice, and sometimes I'll just do a timer with Alexa. Sometimes I have an iPad that's not connected to my email or my text messages. And so that's like my practice iPad where I have Yoga Glow and meditation apps. And I can access digital meditations without being distracted. So sometimes I'll do guided practices on there. This morning I got to meditate for an hour, which was amazing. Usually my practice is closer to 30 minutes in the morning. And sometimes I'll do a second dose in the afternoon, like do a more relaxing yoga nidra practice or something like that.
And let's get real detailed. Like, what time are you getting up?
Okay. So I work for myself like you. So I am pretty flexible. I think, it's Dr. Michael Breus he's like a sleep doctor guy. Have you seen any of his work?
No, but I need to.
Okay. He has this thing called chronotypes, which is like your ideal kind of circadian rhythm, like when your body is meant to be awake. And I'm a bear, like I think most people are. And so he said that it's optimal to wake up between 7 and 7:30. Okay. So I've gone through my phases of waking up very
5 a.m.
Yeah. Right now, because I have the flexibility to start my day when I want, I wake up between I think this morning, 7:15. And then I give myself about an hour and a half for a morning routine before I log on to anything work related or check email. So yeah, I know, like if I have somewhere to be in the morning, I can backtrack it and say, okay, well, I need at least 2 hours to like have my time in the morning. And so my wake up time can vary depending on my first obligation of the day, but I'm really grateful for that time. And I will tell you, I can remember specific mornings where I've started my day by checking email. And those are some of the worst days because think about it. We're like allowing ourselves to get into that reactive place immediately and allowing ourselves to have our schedule dictated by what other people need instead of what we need to be okay and be healthy and productive.
I was listening to Lauren Bostic from The Skinny Confidential, and she was talking about emails, and she was saying that if you change anything in your business, anything in your workflow, anything in your day, it's emails that we need to time block them and block an hour a day. Like we really don't need more than an hour to actually fulfill responding to our emails. But she was saying that, whether that's half an hour in the morning, half an hour when you check out, or just 1 hour altogether, she was saying that set aside that time to respond, to take care of everything, because regardless, if you block it off each day, everyone's getting responded to within 24 hours, which, is more than enough. Although we want that immediate response, in reality, it's more than enough unless you're, in the medical field or something. But she was saying that that's actually creating control and giving you power over your own time. Because when we do get up and respond or stop what we're doing to check emails and see what's going on, we're working on everybody else's schedules and not our own. And so we lose a lot of power in our day, which, also affects productivity and all of that. But I've actually done that, and I haven't been great about it lately because there's so much going on in the world right now. But the days I do that, my productivity is completely changed. My stress levels are so much lower, and I actually feel accomplished at the end of the day. It's not one of those days where you're just busy and then you're like, what did I even do? But that's definitely huge for sure. And I noticed a big shift too as well when I check my emails first thing in the morning versus, preparing myself to check emails.
That's so true, Valerie. I turned 30 about a month ago, and I gave myself the gift of taking the email app off my phone.
Ooh.
So, because I've read similar things to you of email is such a time suck, and what you're kind of hinting at is that we actually end up reading emails multiple times to remember what they're about and then respond. And so it's much more efficient when we do it at a time block. And I swear for the first 4 or 5 days, I was going through withdrawal because it's variable rewards, right? We look in our email, we're going to get personal stuff, good news, bad news, now just the crazy stuff that's happening in the world, right? And so we get addicted to that, almost slot machine type, I wonder what's going to happen when I open my email. But I have been so much more intentional and effective in the way that I email now, because it's like you're saying, I sit down with a full keyboard at my disposal and I get to send out thoughtful replies to people in a kind of time block. And I thought that I would lose a lot of response time, like you're saying, if I took it off my phone or wasn't checking as often. But I haven't had any clients complain about anything. And I've noticed the amount of mistakes that I've made go down a lot less in the emails. And I've felt much more efficient and intentional about spending my time communicating with people in that way.
And that's what I love about it, is it really helps you be intentional with your time. And that's one thing as a business owner that I'm trying to do for myself, but then also for my team. I am really focusing on, time blocking and being able to sit down and give full attention to the task at hand. And that's one thing I've had to really work with clients on and communicate to them, that it's not me trying to not be available to them or not me trying to minimize communication. It's actually me trying to provide a better service and more intention and more focus on their service. And when I put it that way, they're like, oh, I should try that. And I'm like, yes, please do. But it definitely is a game changer as well. But I wanted to ask, from a neuroscience perspective, why is it our attention spans, or how did we get to a point where when you're sitting on the couch and you're watching TV, you may not do this because you have so much practice, but I've noticed my husband and I do it all the time. We'll be watching TV, but then we'll both also be sitting on our phones scrolling through Instagram. But then I realize that I don't even know what I'm looking at. I don't even know what's on TV, and I also don't know what's on my phone. And I'm like, but what's going on in my brain then? What is actually going on?
Right. No, you're totally not alone. I find myself doing the same thing where I realize that, wow, I'm trying to do 2 things at once, and I'm actually not doing either one of them really effectively. So when we look at kind of the neuroscience behind quote unquote multitasking, it's actually ends up that most of the time we're just switching back and forth between tasks. So, if we're scrolling on Instagram and watching TV, we might watch TV for a few seconds and then re-engage with Instagram. And so every time that we switch our attention from one thing to another in that way, we get what's called attention residue. So the thing that we were just looking at takes up some of our mental space, even as we're re-engaging with something different. And there's a guy called Clifford Nass out of Stanford, and he estimates that we lose about 40% of efficiency when we try to do 2 things at once in that way, and consciously attend to 2 things. So I will say there's a difference, right? there's a type of multitasking that's possible where one of the tasks doesn't require conscious attention. So that would be like
a call when you're walking or something.
Exactly. Yeah, that's exactly right, Valerie, because we know how to walk, right? We don't have to think about it.
Hopefully.
But we might find ourselves, if we're texting while walking, we might trip over something, right? Because we're not actually attending to the walking and paying attention. Or, and that's where we get into trouble with things like being on our phones while we're driving, right? Most of the time it can turn out okay, but if on the off chance someone else, there's an obstacle or someone swerves, right? We have no attention bandwidth to pay attention to that and respond in a safe way while we're driving. Mm-hmm. And so I think there's some potential for multitasking. Like you're saying, if you're walking and talking on the phone is a really healthy way to do that. Or you're doing crunches while watching The Voice or something like that, right? Mm-hmm. Like there are ways that we can combine activities, or having a cup of coffee while you meditate, right? Yeah. But I think the important word to remember is conscious, that it's really difficult to consciously pay attention to two things at once.
Definitely. And that's one of the things I've noticed in a lot of my research for productivity is I think there has, again, a badge of honor with multitasking. Like I used to be like, oh, I'm a great multitasker. I can do 75 things at once. I can check my emails, edit a video and all this. And then one day I was listening to a podcast about it and they were saying, you're actually 40% less effective. And I was like insulted. I was like, how dare you? I am very productive. And now that I'm time blocking, I'm realizing how much more I can get done and how much more quality is behind what I'm doing, And I think it's just like when you're having a conversation with somebody, if you're having a conversation with them and they're sitting on their phone, you don't feel like it's a quality conversation. So it's like treating your tasks with the same respect. Like if you want to do good work, or even if it's something as simple as going to the gym, you don't want to be texting throughout the gym or whatever, because you want to dedicate that time to it. But it definitely makes a huge difference in productivity for sure. And I mean, I feel like there's just so much to gain from time blocking, and then just, like you said, having that conscious focus and prioritizing that as well. Well, I don't want to take up too much of your time, but I would love to have you host a meditation that you mentioned for any listeners, just a little sneak peek mini meditation for anybody listening.
Yeah, that sounds great, Valerie. Just to kind of bring it full circle, I think like what we talked about with, doing one thing at a time, we can actually think about that as like an informal mindfulness practice, right? Like anytime that we commit to time blocking, we're building that mental muscle of actually focusing on one thing at a time. And so that's what we do too when we do a meditation like we're about to do, is it's like we take our brains to the gym and we do weight training to improve our attention span, to improve our ability to focus. And so a short meditation like this will help to calm the nervous system, bring you out of any kind of fight or flight activation into a state of rest and digest. And it will also help you start to build those mental muscles for single tasking, which, as Valerie so eloquently mentioned, will help you perform better in your business. There might be some kind of skepticism at first as you go from that, like all that activity of multitasking to, oh my gosh, one thing at a time. But as Valerie mentioned, there's research that shows that we're actually a lot more effective when we do what we're about to do and really focus on just one thing at once. So if you guys are able to join us for a short meditation practice, you might find yourself in a comfortable seat. You can roll the shoulders up, back, and down. Allow your eyes to softly close. Soften the jaw and the face. Invite a deeper breath in through the nose. And sigh out of an open mouth. Couple more deep breaths in this way, breathing in through the nose. And letting sighs out of an open mouth. Go ahead and take one more big breath at your own pace. And continue to feel the breath in your body. Maybe now you're breathing into and out of the nose. And with every inhale, you can say to yourself, breathing in, I calm the body. As you breathe out, breathing out, I calm the mind. Breathing in, I calm the body. Breathing out, I calm the mind. A few more breaths in this way. Breathing in, I calm the body. Breathing out, I calm the mind. And when you notice that you've been distracted by thinking, you can acknowledge it and bring yourself gently back to the breath, just like you would bring a puppy back to the sitting position as you're teaching him to sit. And finding one more round of conscious breath. And curling the corners of your mouth up in a small smile of gratitude to yourself for taking this time for intention, for focus, for calm. No matter what happens in the rest of your day or week, you have these tools of deep breathing, of calming the body and the mind through breath. Gently wiggle your fingers, wiggle your toes. Allow yourself to come back into the space and blink open your eyes.
You're so good at that.
How are you feeling?
I love it so much. I literally can feel like, even just a minute in, I can just feel such a big difference because, like I said, I'm a very go, go, go person, and it's nice to just chill.
It is. Like I always say, we're human beings, right? Not human doings. But it's so easy in this world to be like, go, 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 do, do, do. And so we don't have to stop doing, but we can take moments to touch into the being, like you said, even just a minute or two, and we can kind of feel that stress level decrease and get in touch with that, our humanity, right? Our essence, which we can lose track of when we're rushing around.
Definitely. I love that so much. Can you share with us all of the resources you have and other meditation offerings that you have for anybody that may want to check out or book a session or anything like that in the future?
Yeah, thanks so much, Valerie. So I think we talked about a few different resources in terms of apps and then Tara Brach's rain practice. So I'll share those with you all, the links in the show notes. And I also want to highlight my company, Mastermind Meditate. So as I mentioned, we are different in that we bring the neuroscience to the practice of mindfulness. So give you more insight like we did today on how your brain works and how these simple mindfulness techniques can improve the way that your brain works. And we are on Instagram and Facebook as Mastermind Meditate, and our website is mastermindmeditate.com. If you go there, you'll be able to sign up for our email and get $10 off your first virtual class. You'll also find science-based mindfulness blogs. You'll find free meditations, a link to our YouTube channel as well, so that you can start practicing right away. And I would really encourage you to get connected with us virtually, because our big focus point for 2020 has been to reach people all over the country, all over the world with these science-based techniques. And our virtual classes are growing, and it's so exciting to see people be able to take time out of their day no matter where they are. And as Valerie mentioned, right, tune into that sense of being rather than doing, teaching you, exposing you to these simple techniques that can restore a sense of calm, lower your stress, and ultimately help you be more effective in what you do, both at work and at home.
Amazing. And all of her resources are so great. She's incredible what she does. And I just love every single session I've ever done with you. I still think back to like some of the long form, the full day classes and stuff, and they were just so impactful. But we will also include a separate meditation recording that you can listen to whenever convenient for you. So you can get a longer version meditation with Dorsey as well. But thank you so much for coming on. I know for sure I'm going to have you back on because I have a list of things I want to talk about with you. I really want to cover memory. And I know you were telling me last time we saw each other in person that you were doing a whole semester on it. And I'm like, I want to know all the things.
Right? Because we all have brains, right? We all want to know, like, how do they work?
Yes. And I know you've got all the answers. So we'll definitely have to have you back on. But thank you so much for your time today. And you glow, girl.
Thanks, Valerie.